Alright, welcome to Gibs. This is a game where you're taking control of these little creatures that are trying to steal as many gems as they can. You come out on top if you score the most points out of the gems that you acquire. So if we look at the scorecard here, each gem scores differently. So at the end of the game, you're trying to get the most of different types of gems, and these are all going to give you points, various on what kind of things are happening. So for instance, like with a green gem, if you have more green gems than anybody else, you get 10 points. And some gems could be worth up to 3 points each, like the red gem. If you have more than 3 red gems, each of those gems are worth 3 points apiece. So they get they get very good at a higher number. So in this game, the first thing you're gonna do is each player is gonna get one of these player reference cards. The start player gets a red one. Then everybody else is gonna get just the regular one. That just shows who the start player is, so you have equal turns. To start, then also for the number of players that have played in a 3-player game, you're going to draw a number of cards and put them in a line equal to the number of players plus 1. So in a 3-player game, it's going to be 4 cards. 2, 3, 4. So this is our Gib lineup. So we look at our actions each turn. You'll notice there's draw last card from the line, play a card, and exhaust a card. We'll come back to those in a second. First off, let's go ahead and finish our setup, which I forgot to do here. So you're going to start with 2 Gibs in front of you. So each player will have 2 of them just randomly off the deck. And then you're going to have a hand of 3 cards. You're going to get a couple more cards depending on where you are in turn order. The last player gets 3 cards, and then it's 1 extra card for each person in a row around in counterclockwise order, because first player really kind of has a disadvantage and the last player has a big advantage in this game. So that's one way. That's the way that I mitigate the advantage, is the cards at the beginning. So I have 3 cards here, and now each of these cards have different actions on them. These actions are made up of different symbols, and on this player reference, it goes over what each of the symbols mean. In the rule book, it also goes over the individual abilities. If I go back over here to my rule book, you'll see here's all the different abilities. It's going to go over each one of them. Let me scroll back over here. Alright, so on a typical turn, the 3 actions we take is draw a card, play a card, or exhaust a card for the action. Now, if I'm drawing a card, I always draw from the end of the line. And that's where this little guy here comes in, where I can rearrange the line. So if I have him in play, I can reorder these, and then I can use a different action to draw from the end. So let's say I really want this Scudda. So my first action would probably be to play out my Seer. So this is my Devere, which is a Divining Seer. I'm going to use my second action to exhaust him to rearrange these. And maybe I want to rearrange these 2 here because I want this guy. And my last action will be to draw this to my hand. So that's all 3 actions taken. I did a different action for each one. And again, this guy's ability was just rearrange 2 cards in here. Now, since I've taken one from I drew a card from here, these all shift down 1 space. And then I refill it in the end like this. Play will continue going around and around until this deck runs out. So basically, if you can't take a card from this deck and put it onto here, then the game's over. That's the end condition of the game. Now, whenever I'm playing out Gibs, let's pretend it comes back to my turn and I still have this going on here. The Gibs that are unexhausted, which are the ones that aren't turned sideways, these Gibs are pretty much protected by everything except for this Hypno. He's the only one that can really affect these cards. All the other abilities, you'll see that have a little tapped G on here. That's just an exhausted Gib. So people can mess with your exhausted Gibs. Like this one here that I grabbed, the Scudda, he swaps 2 exhausted Gibs. If a Gib ever leaves your possession and goes to somebody else, so let's pretend that this player over here has an exhausted Horda, and I have this Devere. Let's say I played out this one, and then I exhaust this, and I trade them this one, and they trade me this one. The new card that goes into play is going to be unexhausted to both players. And now I don't have to use that on myself. I can swap 2 other players, but it's still, they'll get them unexhausted. So now I can use this ability on a future turn or on this turn. If for some reason I ever have more than 3 of these unexhausted ones, because remember, these are more protected than the tapped ones, or than the exhausted. So if I ever have more than 3 of these, at the end of my turn, I have to discard one. So in this case, I have these 4. I'll be like, okay, maybe I'm not collecting oranges, so I'll say I'll just discard this. And then I have 3 left. The exhausted ones you can have any number of. These are basically your gems that you're collecting. So once you've used their ability, they become the gem. At the end of the game, you're going to see who has the most of each gem. And it does score from top to bottom on this card. And then the rolls go over the scoring a little bit more detail if you need it. But you start at the green, go to the orange, then red, then yellow, then blue, then purple. So you do top to bottom. And you'll notice that at the very top, it says before scoring, you can discard a Gib to the Gib line. So you can take one of these gems that you don't really care as much about and you throw into the Gib line. You might want to do that because of the blue gems. So that's a +1, or you get a point +1 per 2 gems left in the Gib line that you match. So if I have a green here and I'm not really playing, I don't think I'm going to score green, I may throw a green up to the Gib line because now I match the more gems up here. I match 2 greens. I don't have any red or blue, so that would just be 2 of them there, which would make my blue gems worth 2 points. So if I would only do that if I had blue, of course. So let's say I had this one, and let's just fill that in. All right, so in this case, I match 1, 2, 3, 4 gems because I match green, yellow, and blue. So I'll look down here. I'll get 3 points for my blue gem now, because each of them is going to be worth 1 +1 per 2 gems I match in the line. That's really all there is to this game. Highest score wins at the end, and the game generally takes about half hour, usually at most, sometimes 45 minutes if you have a lot of people that don't know the game.